In this section we're going to look at the layout functions within HTML5. When HTML5 was actually being designed, the designers actually considered how websites are actually being used, and they actually found a pattern across the vast majority of especially commercial websites. For example, most websites tend to have a section at the top, or a header section. They also have a navigation on the left, followed by some main content, and then a section on the right which often contains adverts or other less important information. At the very bottom of the page there's often a legal section or sections about the website itself, and the information contained within this section is often not very important for most users. So as they were going through the process of actually developing this new language, they decided to create new element tags to actually distinguish between each of these sections. So for example, they created a header tag, which is used to actually define the header information within a web page. They then created a main tag, which is obviously used to highlight the main content of the page, followed by a footer, which, as I mentioned on the Amazon example, often contains legal information and information which is not very useful to the vast majority of customers. At the same time, they also decided to simplify the doctype tag. With previous versions of HTML, this was often a very long, complex line, and was often a source of many errors on a web page, which meant accessibility did become an issue. With HTML5, this entire doctype tag has been simplified to the point that you just need to type doctype and then HTML. All modern browsers should now recognize this as being HTML5 and render the page accordingly. Now, if you're coming from developing for HTML 4.01 or any previous version of HTML, you may be asking why you don't just use the div tag anymore. And the truth is that you can still use the div tag. In this case we'll just replace the header with a div tag. But there are many problems with doing this. The two most significant of which are the fact that it can be very confusing when it comes to maintaining your website in the future, especially if you have a lot of div tags nested within one another, and also because using the new HTML5 tags properly can actually increase your search page ranking within web search engines such as Google. This is because when Google or any other search engine is actually crawling through your website to identify where it should be ranked, it doesn't actually understand the context of where each of these elements are laid out. It just sees a list of elements, and so it doesn't know where the important information within the page is. If we replace these div tags with headers again, when Google's actually searching this page now, it will be able to see that the content within the header tags is actually just a page header, which means that the content within those tags isn't going to be given as high priority as the information within the main tags, because we're saying that the main content of the page is what's actually important. Now, we're obviously still able to customize how we use each of these elements. For example, we have the masthead section here, as well as just a normal section. And these can be considered to be the syntactic equivalent of these sections within the Amazon web page. So this would be considered the masthead, while these two sections containing 7 articles each could be just the main sections within the page. Obviously we haven't styled them, and so when we reload our page we don't actually see them in that format, but that just comes down to styling more than anything else. So over the course of the rest of this series we're going to be taking an in-depth look at the rest of these sections. So we will be looking at how sections can be used, for example, in terms of displaying articles, also in terms of displaying images and news web pages and things like that. And we'll be doing that rather than actually having sections on each individual element. So for example, a section on a menu item wouldn't actually make any sense unless you also talked about the menu. And so we will have a section on navigation and menus and how they can be used differently within different sections of your website. And we will also be touching on some of the other elements within HTML5. HTML5 is actually a very open standard, and it does allow you to go as far as creating your own unique elements and defining how they should be used within a web page. So stay tuned. It might be very useful for you if you're designing your website to be viewable on both desktop PCs as well as mobile phones or tablets.